Hello, everybody. This is Sophia Mona Lisa of the Golden Ray Center and the Rose Wheel Mystery School. And welcome back to another one of my cosmic event videos. This will be found on my cosmic event playlist. Today, I'm talking about the United States final activation of the Pluto return that happened yesterday, December 28th. Today is December 29th. There is a reason why this did not get recorded yesterday. And you can thank Pluto and Mercury for that. And it's okay because I know that everything is always in divine timing. So it's perfect today. So this is a huge topic, this Pluto return for the United States. This has been building. The message that's going to be coming across today has been building and desiring to come through for a long time. And it was very challenging for me to kind of separate the frequencies and get a logical sequence of storytelling around this event to be able to put into slides for you. So while I have kind of an idea of what's going to come across, because I did create the slides, spirit speaks through me, so who knows what's actually going to come through. And I guess that mystery is the fun of it all. So this Pluto return, let's talk about that. Before we do, let's go back and look at let me find a good place for this, two of the United States' most historical documents, because these documents are significant in terms of this Pluto return. First of all, of course, the Declaration of Independence that was signed on July 4th, 1776. This Pluto return is related to the position of Pluto in the sky at the time of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And so it's taken 246 years for Pluto to come back to the exact same spot in the sky as it was when the declaration was signed. And, what's the significance of Pluto? Well, there are numerous. If you've watched any of my episodes on my Spotlight on Influencers series, you will recall that this season 2, focused on Pluto as the sole mission. And so you could even say that this Pluto return is related to the sole mission of this nation as a whole. And so that's what the Pluto return point is about. It's tied directly to that Pluto position and the signing of the Declaration of Independence. But there's another significant document that comes into play. And the reason that we're looking at this, and it's because it wanted to come through, it's really inviting us to expand our consciousness away from a single event, such as this Pluto return, to the larger cycles around the event. What happened before, what's happening now, what's coming up. All of this is part of the cosmic dance, and one piece relates to the other piece. And my intention is that I will articulate this well enough that you'll understand how all of these pieces fit together. So first of all, it's important to understand that at the end of the American Revolutionary War, the founders had created an Articles of Confederation. And those articles were defining the governmental structure that would allow the states to keep their individual powers while benefiting from being a part of a larger nation. And so this is where we got the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists later, when the when the United States Constitution was coming onto the scene, and some of the back and forth around that. But what happened was, these articles that went into effect on March 1st, 1781, they were not viable. And it became clear by 1787 that the structure that they were intending to create was not going to be viable for the long term. And that's why there was this shift to creating this new structure underneath the United States Constitution. So the Constitution was created to replace those Articles of Confederation that were not going to work. And so what's interesting is the timing with the Constitution. It was signed on September 17th, 1787 in Independence Hall in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. But it wasn't ratified until June 21st, 1788, and that happened in Concord, New Hampshire. So what happened is, when it was signed, there was this requirement that 9 of the 13 colonies had to ratify it in order for it to become law. And it took that long, up to 1788, June 1788, in order for it to be finally ratified by the ninth colony, the ninth state, New Hampshire. And then others ratified it after that. But that's kind of a critical point. In fact, it was so critical in terms of, the real strong debate between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists that were trying to keep this from being ratified and trying to get it ratified, that they actually even notated at that Concord Convention the time that New Hampshire ratified the Constitution. And of course, with astrology, timing is everything. In order to really get into the deep nitty-gritty of the chart, you've got to have a time, which was 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So you'll see later when we look at that chart that's the chart I'm looking at related to the Constitution. And it's that June 21st, 1788 date when the 9th colony ratified it so that it could become law. And I know a lot of people will recognize June 21st as being related to the summer solstice. But if you listen to my winter solstice video, which I'll put a link to here, the solstices aren't based on dates in the calendar. They're based on when the sun moves to a specific point in the sky. With the winter solstice, it was 0 degrees Capricorn. With the summer solstice, it's 0 degrees Cancer. So in 1788, the actual summer solstice was the day before it was signed on June 20th. Now, even though it was ratified on June 21st, 1788, it didn't go into effect until March 1789. So, there's 3 dates: 1787, 1788, 1789. And as I indicated, because of the timing that was specifically and intentionally documented when that 9th colony ratified it, that's the date we're going with. Now, you'll recognize here that the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776. The Constitution was ratified in 1788. That's 12 years after the Declaration of Independence was signed. And even that 12-year period is a significant period because it takes the planet Jupiter 12 months to move through an entire astrological sign. So that is even significant. Now you'll see here, we've got 2 pictures here. This is the Declaration of Independence. This is the United States Constitution. And I am not, a history professor. I am by no means any kind of expert in American history, much less world history. So I can't speak to all of the nitty-gritty details, but I have a feeling that many Americans, especially those that have not gone through the naturalization process, because those that go through the naturalization process, they have to study a lot of information in order to become citizens. But for those born in the United States, they don't pay attention, probably, unless it's really their passion, to American history in high school. They're probably not, history majors in college, although there are some, of course. But the bulk of Americans, I would say, probably confuse the two documents, the Declaration of Independence and the United States Constitution. And I'm not here to clear the path to help you understand the difference between the two. But with this Pluto return, the significance of what happened with the Constitution and how it relates to the Declaration of Independence was desiring to come forth and to be spoken to. So I'm going to attempt to do that the best that I can. As I said, not having a PhD in history or even a history major in college, doing the best that I can. Okay. Now, with this Pluto return, this is the thing that you need to understand about Pluto and this return. Pluto is in the sign of Capricorn. And Capricorn is all about sovereignty. And you're going to see how this theme of Pluto and Capricorn related to sovereignty is fundamental to the whole mission and purpose behind writing this Declaration of Independence. And it was really an announcement that these 13 American colonies were regarding themselves as sovereign, independent states and no longer wanted to be part of the British Empire. And of course, it was because of this, taking this stand of sovereignty, that eventually, the American Revolutionary War happened. But this was the first big piece. It's all about these founders that came to this country that wanted to govern themselves in a different way, that wanted to worship in a different way, and in many other, own property probably that they were not able to own back in Mother England. So this is the key point, that this document is establishing this choice, this decision, that we are intending to pursue this mission of being sovereign unto ourselves and no longer under the British Empire or having to, be governed by the king. So that's the main thing to understand about this particular piece. And so what happened, this is the glyph for Pluto, this is the glyph for Capricorn, just to point that out to you. What happened is, on that date, when the Declaration of Independence was signed, Pluto was located at 27 degrees Capricorn, 33 minutes, and it was in retrograde. Now, as I said, the Pluto return means that Pluto has taken those 246 years to come back around to this point in the sky, this 27 degrees, 33-minute point of Capricorn. Now, over the course of this year, 2022, we've actually had 3 activations of this Pluto return point. Not every planet that has a return. So for instance, if you're engaged with astrology, you know that you'll have, a Saturn return, a Chiron return, whatever the return planetary, luminary body is that's having a return. That return does not always experience 3 activations. This Pluto return for the United States is experiencing 3 activations. So that in itself is highly significant. And so this is how that works. February 21st, 2022, Pluto comes up to 27 degrees Capricorn, 33 minutes, and then it moves past it. And then it starts to go into a retrograde phase, which makes it look like it's going backwards, but it's not really. And so it comes back to that 27 degrees, 33 minutes points. That's the second activation on July 12th. And it continues beyond it as well, going, backwards. And then it stations direct and it makes another move forward to that 27 degrees, 33 minutes. And that's what happened yesterday. That exact return point happened yesterday. Now, Pluto is a very slow moving planet. As we say here in the South, it's as slow as molasses. And so, Pluto has not hardly even had a chance to take a beat and move much past that return point today. So we're still very much under the influences of this Pluto return the next day, December 29th. So that's how those 3 activations happened. Pluto hits that 27 degree mark on February 21st, moves beyond it, then retrogrades, comes back, hits it again on July 12th, keeps moving away from it, and then stations direct and comes up and hits it again. Okay, that's how those 3 activations happen. So now that you understand that the 3 activations of a return is significant and doesn't always happen with a planetary return, let me share with you what, for me, I discern the impact, energetic impact of these 3 activations are all about. Oh, before I do that, sometimes I forget what order I put my slides. This speaks again to this Pluto in Capricorn and the sovereignty piece. In 2018, then President Trump made an address to the United Nations General Assembly, and he said, sovereign and independent nations are the only vehicle where freedom has ever survived, democracy has ever endured, or peace has ever prospered. And so we must protect our sovereignty and our cherished independence above all. And of course, when he's using those pronouns, ours, we must protect our sovereignty and our cherished independence. He's speaking about the United States of America, the American government, the American people. We must protect our sovereignty and our independence. And it's because of this theme of Pluto being in Capricorn that this address during this time when Pluto is in Capricorn, being about sovereignty was so significant, so timely, so to speak. And you can see that Pluto has been in Capricorn since 2008 and will continue to be in Capricorn through 2024. But we're going to look a little bit more closely at what's happening over 2023 and 2024 as Pluto is moving in and out of Capricorn and Aquarius, kind of back and forth. All right, so let's speak to those three activations. So this is the analogy that I always give everybody when I'm talking about any kind of a return that they're experiencing that has these three activations. The first activation has the effect, right? The energetic effect of laying out the grid work for whatever it is, whatever building, let's say, that you're getting ready to build. First thing you do is you lay out the grid work so you know what that footprint of the foundation is going to look like. So that's the energetic effect of that first activation. The second activation is, okay, we've got this grid work, and so now let's pour in the concrete, the cement. I don't know the difference between the two. Let's pour it into this grid work and let's level it out. Okay, that's the effect of that second activation. By the time we hit the third activation, which was yesterday, we now have this very solid, leveled foundation upon which we can build. And so, I've said in previous videos over the course of the year, yes, it's kind of felt like a near-death experience for Americans over the course of this year. And that's because we've been having these three Pluto return activation points. But remember what the energy of Pluto is all about. Pluto is about death and rebirth. It is about taking anything that is in your reality, inner reality and outer reality, that is not serving your personal evolutionary expansion. And if you're not letting go of it, it will flip and burn it to the ground. And so, it's like, first you get the whisper to let go of it. And if you don't hear the whisper to let it go, just let it go. Come on now, let it go. You will get hit by that cosmic 2x4. And if you don't get that wake-up call to let it go, then Pluto will burn it to the ground. And it may feel like a near-death experience when Pluto burns everything to the ground. But remember, everything that it's burning to ground is what no longer serves your soul's evolutionary expansion. And this is true of our nation, the United States of America. Our nation as a whole has its own soul and its own soul mission. And what's not serving the mission is going to be burned to the ground so that it can build on this new foundation that this third activation is affecting for it. It's a foundation, right? Now the walls have to go up, then the roof has to go on, right? All of the pieces coming together to create this new house for our nation. And so this is the effect of what's going on with this Pluto return. Now, this Pluto return in the week leading up to it has had two other significant cosmic events happen. One was the winter solstice on December 21st. And I invite you to watch that video. If you haven't seen it, I'll put a link in below. And the other was the first gate activation of the Venus ascent journey, that Capricorn goddess journey that we are in now. And so it's highly significant that the Venus Capricorn goddess, the goddess of sovereignty, is on the world stage right now. And it's only on the world stage for 19 months. But it started in January. And when was the first activation of the Pluto return? February. This entire year that we've been having these 3 activations of the Pluto return, we've had the Venus Capricorn goddess on the world stage. That's highly significant. It's highly synchronistic that both events are happening simultaneously. And so Venus, who represents in the as above, the sacred feminine, as in the as below, your inner feminine, that feminine energy has been supporting the United States in its ability to go through these 3 activations to get to this point where this new foundation has been created through this 3rd activation. And isn't it interesting that this 3rd activation is 4 days after that first gate of the Venus ascent journey? This is highly, highly significant. And you're going to see as we look at the Pluto return chart how Venus is playing a significant role. And when we look forward to the Pluto return of the United States Constitution, how what's happening with Venus in the sky yesterday and today is going to be kind of mirrored at that Pluto return. So this is highly significant. If you haven't seen that video on that first gate activation where we received a channel message from Mother Mary, I will put that link in the description box below as well for you to go back into. So on the 21st, the winter solstice, the 24th, that first Venus gate on the ascent journey is being activated. And now the 28th, this 3rd and final activation of the Pluto return. All of this happening in a week, meaning all of the energies of the winter solstice and that Venus gate activation were preparing the path for this foundational piece, this 3rd and final activation. They are not individual, independent cosmic events. They are linked together like links in a chain, one after the other, making each other stronger. Okay. All right. Now, this is the chart of the United States of America from July 4th, 1776. And there is significant stuff going on here related to this mission of declaring our sovereignty from the British Empire, from the King of England, that is coded into this birth chart for our nation that we must be aware of. And what's really significant today is, which is why the video is being done today, December 29th, and not yesterday, is today, Mercury, the cosmic messenger, is stationing retrograde in Capricorn. And so whenever the cosmic messenger is stationing retrograde, it's wanting you to look at what is it that you need to remember, right? Remember, bring back together pieces that have gotten lost along the way, need to be remembered and brought back together. And that remembering that the cosmic messenger and the Mercury stationing retrograde today is highly connected to what we see in this chart at the birth of our nation, what we will see in the Pluto return chart, and even what we'll see 12 years from now in that Pluto return for the Constitution. So let me get my glasses on so I can look much more closely at this. All right. The main thing that you need to recognize is this triangle here is what we call a yod. And we know it's a yod because the base points, this is a base point and this is a base point. They're 60 degrees away from each other. We call that 60 degrees a sextile. So when the base of a triangle is at 60 degrees, that means that the apex of the triangle here is at 150 degrees away from each base point. That's what mathematically and astrologically constitutes a yod. And a yod is very significant. It's known as the finger of God. I call it the finger of the goddess. And what it's indicating is that this is a point of destiny. This is something that will happen come hell or high water. Nothing's going to stop it from happening. So let's look at this yod in relation to the mission and the purpose of what the Declaration of Independence was all about. First thing we see, of course, at that 2733 degree point of Capricorn is Pluto in Capricorn. So already we know, okay, the mission is we're establishing sovereignty. And notice how that point is directly below and cuts right in half this base. It's directly below the apex and it cuts this base in half. It's falling, boom, right down. So this purpose, this mission is supporting everything that's happening at this apex. And actually these base points do the same. And I'll get into those luminary bodies in a minute. So what happens is the frequencies of this base point and the frequency of this other base point, they blend together and they thrust their energies up here to the apex to ensure its manifestation. You could say it's like rocket fuel, giving it that lift, that takeoff. Okay, so before we look at the apex and these base points, who is standing next to Pluto? The Magdalene. The Magdalene represents the embodiment of Sophia consciousness, your inner divine wisdom. And we know that the founders of this nation were known at that time as men of enlightenment. And that enlightenment was being fueled by their inner Sophia, the divine wisdom, prompting them to giving them the words to be able to write that Declaration of Independence. And what's up here at the apex? The cosmic messenger, retrograde. And isn't it interesting that it's at 24 degrees of Capricorn retrograde? Because today, Mercury stations retrograde, not in Cancer, but in Capricorn at 24 degrees. Directly across the sky is where that Mercury retrograde is happening today. I mean, think of the cosmic intelligence that has to come together in order for, on this exact day, and it's the day after the third and final activation but Mercury's been kind of dancing around this 24-degree point, even yesterday. That Mercury is now 245, 246 years later, standing exactly across the sky, also retrograde from where it was at this apex of this yod when the Declaration of Independence was written. And so, of course, Mercury is all about communication. It's about writing the Declaration. It's about making that announcement, to the King of England and the British Empire that we are standing in our sovereignty and we are not going to be under you anymore. Okay? And in Cancer is ruled by the moon, who represents, in mundane astrology, the mother. I look at it as the divine mother, but communicating this message to the motherland, right? This is an emotional declaration, which of course Cancer is all about. And so let's look at these base points. What do we have over here? We have Lucifer, which is separation consciousness, and the moon, the ruler of Cancer, that mother energy. And so this is very much speaking to, we are separating ourselves in Aquarius from the collective being the British Empire. We are separating ourselves from the mother, from that British Empire. And who's over here in Sagittarius, helping them to speak their truth, to reach the spiritual ideals that they want to incorporate in this message of the Declaration of Independence, is Isis, the cosmic Sophia. You've got the Sophia above, and you've got the Sophia below, Isis and Magdalene right here. So the sacred feminine is very, very much a part of this soul mission. And you need to hang on to the fact that whether they were aware of it or not, that the sacred feminine was driving and supporting this declaration and ensuring the success of them being able to take their sovereignty. And who's standing next to Sophia? Arthur, the wise and compassionate leader. Remember, the sacred masculine always, always, always serves and supports the sacred feminine. And so all of those high ideals that were expressed by Thomas Jefferson and whomever else helped him to draft that declaration was coming from that wise and compassionate leader of themselves. Those writers and signers of the Declaration of Independence, they were the leaders for these 13 colonies that wanted to take their sovereignty away from Britain. So you can see that the whole intention around why that declaration was written and signed is completely encoded into this birth chart for the United States. And the big piece I want you to take away from this, because it comes back later when we look more closely at what's happening with Venus, is that the sacred feminine, that cosmic Sophia, that divine wisdom, in as a part of the great source, and as a part of an expression of our soul that is an extension of that great source, was driving and supporting this. Now, what's important to understand before we look at the Pluto return is that we know 12 years later, the Constitution became ratified as the replacement for those Articles of Confederation. And in 1988, the US Senate paid tribute with a resolution that said the confederation of the original 13 colonies into one republic was influenced by the political system developed by the Iroquois Confederacy. Remember the Articles of Confederation, their structure for the government, it wasn't viable, it wasn't working. They had to come up with a new governmental structure that would be viable, that would sustain itself. And they looked to the Iroquois Confederacy and they used their system. And also many of the democratic principles which were incorporated into the Constitution came from the Iroquois Confederacy. And this quote is from this article, How the Iroquois Great Law of Peace Shaped U.S. Democracy by Terry Hansen. I will put a link to this article in the description. It's worth reading because a lot of people don't understand that this Iroquois Confederacy and their Great Law of Peace is the foundation of our United States Constitution. Now, here's the critical piece, and this is why it ties back through this 12-year cycle of Jupiter moving, right? What is Jupiter? The cosmic guru, right? The great teacher. When they did this, the founding fathers threw out the most significant principle of the Great League of Peace. The Iroquois Confederacy included the significant role of women in their doctrine because the Iroquois culture was based on social equality and respect for both men and women. And so fundamentally, the women had a voice in the governance of this, Confederacy, the Iroquois Confederacy. And when the United States founders wrote the Constitution, they stripped the voice of the feminine away from us in that Constitution. And when they did that, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself because I'm already seeing my mind's eye this next slide that talks about women in Iroquois history. When they did that, they unwittingly created, I know we're used to hearing, the lame duck phrase, but that's basically what they did, is they took, okay, you don't want to talk about a duck, let's talk about the national symbol, the eagle. And they wounded one of its wings so that it could no longer fly high. And remember, by the time, well, I didn't mention this yet, so you won't remember, so I'll tell you now. By the time they wrote this Constitution, 12 years later, Pluto was no longer in Capricorn, and it was in Aquarius. And what is Aquarius all about? It's that eagle eye vision. It's collective consciousness. It's having the big picture. They were given the big picture by the Iroquois community. And were they ignorant by taking away the role of women in the Constitution? Or were they just arrogant? I don't know. That's a topic of discussion for another day. But the effect of it has been that for these 245 years, this great nation hasn't been able to be great as great as it was intended to be because of this lame bird syndrome that was created when the founders took the role of women, the voice of women, out of the components that they were given by the Iroquois community through that great law of peace. This is a huge, huge injustice that happened that is going to be made right now. So let's see how that's going to work out. So this is the chart for yesterday. Let me move this little box over here. And what you see is there's Pluto at that return point, 27 Capricorn, 33 minutes. And look at what's standing next to it. Separation consciousness, right? The separation of the women's voice and its role in this great nation. And what's standing next to it? There's Mercury at that 24-degree point. Here it's direct, but today it is now retrograde. And remember what was over here at 24 on the July 4th, 1776? Mercury at 24, retrograde. And who's standing next to Mercury? The Magdalene. Remember, the Magdalene, the embodiment of Sophia consciousness, was standing next to Pluto in 1776. And Venus, the sacred feminine, very closely conjunct Magdalene, not an exact conjunct, but within, I can't remember how many minutes because this is covered up, 20 some minutes, very, very close. So you've got the sacred feminine through Venus, embodiment of Sophia consciousness with Magdalene, Mercury, the cosmic messenger, telling us, remember to build on this new foundation with the voice of the feminine. You've got to restore the voice of the feminine, and that will take care of this separation consciousness. And look at what's standing across the sky from Pluto in Cancer. Lilith, the goddess Lilith, a goddess of sovereignty. She's saying, you've got to use me to be able to regain the sovereignty that this country has lost by being a lame bird. And what's going to help this country be able to take back its sovereignty and fly again? Yeshua, the embodiment of Christ consciousness that's making this T square here. Remember, the sacred masculine always, always, always serves and supports the sacred feminine. And so this embodiment of Christ consciousness is serving these breakthroughs in consciousness that this T square is creating for us around our own ability to take back and build this sovereign nation, this great sovereign nation that we were intended to be, by restoring the voice of the feminine. And let's look a little closer. Pluto is making a trine to the goddess Sedna. Sedna here is in Taurus. You can't see the Taurus glyph down here, but trust me, she's in Taurus. Any earth sign to earth sign is a trine. That's 120 degrees, right? Any element to element, fire to fire, air to air, water to water, earth to earth. Those are trines. The effect of a trine, the energetic effect, is like taking your raft down to the river, getting in the river, and you're not paddling upstream, That's all kinds of resistance. You're getting on the path, you're laying in the sun, and you're letting the current take you downstream. That is the path of most allowance. That is the path of least resistance. And so Sedna is at this mastery point. Any luminary body at 29 degrees of any astrological sign is a mastery point. And Sedna is all about taking the wounds of the past and transforming them so that they become skills and tools to allow us to thrive in this new environment. And so on this new solid leveled foundation that this third activation of Pluto has created for us, Sedna is saying, here, let me help you take all of those things that you've learned from all of those wounds and mistakes over the past 246 years, and let's transform them into skills and resources that you can use to be able to thrive as this new republic, as a new sovereign. This is huge, really super duper huge. Okay. This last piece I want to show you of what's going on with the sacred feminine and the inner Sophia consciousness, that inner divine wisdom that tells you, anytime you get an aha or a download, that's you experiencing Sophia consciousness, divine wisdom. There's no doubt that knowing, that gnosis is the divine wisdom of Sophia. And so yesterday, she was making a sextile. Remember that 60-degree aspect, the sextile that was at the base of the yod at the 1776 chart. She's making a sextile here to Neptune and the goddess Juno in Pisces. And Neptune is the ruler of Pisces. Neptune is your pipeline to source energy, whatever you call source, God, goddess, the great creator, all that is. It's that direct pipeline. And this Juno, goddess of partnership, is saying, I've got your back. You are going to be in partnership with the sacred feminine to be able to restore that feminine voice in order to be able to build this new sovereign nation. And so yesterday, Venus was at 23, but today she's at 24. Conjunct Mercury, which is stationing retrograde today, telling us, remember the voice of the feminine. You must be in partnership with the sacred feminine to be able to support you in creating and building this whole new revolution in terms of reclaiming our sovereignty as a nation. This is huge, absolutely huge. So I hope that made sense to everybody. And I know it's a lot of working pieces coming together, but you can see with these elements of Yeshua, the embodiment of Christ consciousness, and Magdalene, the embodiment of Sophia consciousness, how this is very much, this third activation of the Pluto return is very much an unfolding of the divine plan. when Sophia and Christ come together and move mountains, right? Capricorn represents the mountain that they are moving. That is a manifestation of the divine plan. And so this is the manifestation of the divine plan for this nation, the United States of America, to be able to reestablish this partnership with the sacred feminine and include the feminine voice in terms of moving forward in our sovereignty and thriving in our sovereignty. Okay. Now, Pluto right now is at that 27 degree of Capricorn. We know there's 30 degrees in every astrological sign, and they are numbered 0 to 29. So that 27.5 degrees is very, very close to that 0 degree point of Aquarius. And next year, 2023, we are going to get a taste of what Pluto in Aquarius is all about. And Pluto in Aquarius has to do with the rise of global consciousness, So from March 23rd next year through June 11th next year, which is about 2.5 months, Pluto is going to be activating that 0 degree point. It's going to be standing right on that threshold of Aquarius. Now, what's significant about that time period is that in May, we're having a lunar eclipse at 15 degrees of Scorpio. Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio. And if you've watched my video that I did on the midterm elections, it just so happened that on the election day, we had an eclipse. And I talk about the eclipses on this Taurus-Scorpio axis that's been happening. This is the 6th of the 7 eclipses. And I talk about how what happened on the midterm election may not come into full understanding and realization until this eclipse point. This eclipse point, when Pluto is in Aquarius, when we're going to have this rise of global consciousness, something related to this new foundation that the third activation of Pluto return has created is going to be relevant to that step forward in the reclaiming, the rebuilding of our nation's sovereignty. If you didn't see that video on the midterm elections, there's a lot of information in it. I'll put a link to that in the description box below as well. And then after June of next year, Pluto goes back into Capricorn, frequencies we're very familiar with. And in 2024, January 20th, 2024, Pluto will move into Aquarius again. And it'll stay there until September 1st for about 7.5 months, giving us an even bigger taste of Pluto in Aquarius. So 2023, we're dipping the toes into those Pluto and Aquarian energies. 2024s, we've stepped into those waters and we're like maybe ankle deep, right? Testing out those frequencies. And during that time, Pluto will go from 0 degrees up to 2 degrees of Aquarius. Remember, Pluto moves slowly, very, very slowly. And then in November of 2024 through December 31st of 2024, right? So from September to November, right? That's about 2.5 months. It's Pluto's back in Capricorn, but November 19th through December 31st, Pluto moves into Aquarius for a second time in 2024. It revisits that 0 to 1 degree as Aquarius. And in 2025, it's now Pluto is staying in Aquarius, continues to move forward in Aquarius, and over the year of 2020-25, it will reach up to that 3rd degree of Aquarius. So this is significant because remember what I told you about when the United States Constitution was written. It was written when Pluto was in Aquarius, right? And what was it all about? It was about how are we going to structure our governing for this nation to be viable, to be able to sustain us. And so we're going to be seeing dribs and drabs of that in terms of how this new foundation for our sovereignty has been established yesterday, coming online over 2023 and 2024, and then 2025 moving forward, getting more and more of that to show up from that quantum field. Aquarius is all about the quantum field. So let's talk a little bit about that Pluto and Aquarius in the United States Constitution. This is the United States Constitution. Just like the Declaration of Independence had its Pluto return, which we experienced the final activation of yesterday, the 28th of December, 2022. The Constitution has its own soul mission and will have its own Pluto return. And its soul mission is intended to support the mission of the Declaration of Independence, but it didn't do that. Remember, it created this lame bird effect by stripping the voice of the feminine from the framework that the Iroquois Confederacy gave to us to write our Constitution on. So what will happen is in 2034 and 2035, we will begin to experience the Pluto return for the Constitution. And just like our Declaration of Independence this year had 3 activations of its Pluto return, interestingly, synchronistically, our US Constitution will also have 3 activations of its Pluto return. And I already said Pluto in Aquarius is about the rise of global consciousness. But what's going to happen with this Pluto return is we're going to have what I'm calling the 3rd Great Awakening. Now, traditionally, when they spoke about, or historically, when they spoke about the Great Awakening and the 2nd Great Awakening, it was all tied to politics and religion. This 3rd Great Awakening is not going to be tied to politics and religion, because the sovereignty piece has been built in through Pluto moving through Capricorn. You know, what's going to happen is it's going to create this movement towards a global community for humanity, a true global community, a heart-centered global community. You've got to have the feminine involved, engaged, in order for that heart center to be able to open up and be able to establish a authentic global community for humanity. And this is another reason why it was so devastating to our country when the writers of the Constitution left out the role of women. And we've been limping along for, almost 2.5 centuries now, but this is going to get remedied, and it's being remedied now, as we saw from this 3rd Pluto return that happened yesterday in Capricorn. It's the remedy is coming in place, and it's going to unfold, and it's going to unfold. This is 12 years from now. If you're looking for quick fixes, Pluto is not the place to look for a quick fix. It goes back to the Aesop's fable, right? The turtle wins the race, not the hare, the turtle. And so you could even say, I think that there was a reference at one time, and I'm not remembering it correctly, that this continent, this North American continent that we now call the United States of America, was known by the natives as Turtle Mound or Turtle Nation. And so even that frequency is in the foundation of what this Pluto mission is all about. And so when this third great awakening happens over 2034 and 2035, and I'm going to show you the chart for that final Pluto return for the Constitution in 2035, this move into this global community for humanity is a huge step forward in humanity's ascension, in the Earth's ascension. It's a huge step forward for humanity to be able to join the galactic community. This step must happen in order for us to engage with the galactic community. Now, what's interesting is there was a recent documentary put out on the winter solstice called Piercing Dynasty, where Winifred Adams is interviewing Russell J. Gould. And in there, he makes an amazing statement that I was delighted to hear him make. He talks about how you've got to have the masculine and the feminine in order to create. And this ties back to what happened with the Constitution when they stripped out the voice of the feminine and the role of the feminine. This country has got to restore that and is restoring that now in order for us to create this greater nation that will lead the way to this, global community. So let's look at this chart. And what do we see? This is fascinating. We've got Venus up here in Sagittarius, and we've got Neptune down here in Aries. Now, they're making a trine, but remember what their aspect in the sky was yesterday? They were making a sextile from Capricorn, Venus in Capricorn, to Neptune in Pisces. Now, 12 years from now, they are going to be dancing together again, this time not in a sextile, which is 60 degrees, but in a trine, 120 degrees. Fire, Sagittarius is fire, Aries is fire. And there's that Pluto return point in Aquarius. And what are they doing? They're adding their fire. You could say that this is like the tip. I called it a tip of an arrow when I did my video on Venus rising from the underworld that happened December 1st. But I was doing a reading, a DNA activation reading for one of my clients yesterday that had a very similar aspect in her chart. And we called this a lightsaber. And with these fire elements here, Sagittarius and Aries, we can see that the tip of this lightsaber is the mission of Pluto. This mission for humanity to be a collective, but not in terms of the 13 colonies being a collective, like when the United States Constitution was written, right? That was the mission. How can we function together as a nation? How can we come together as a collective nation? And that goes back to that discussion I told you that the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists had going back and forth in terms of even being able to ratify the Constitution. But here, the collective is not the nation, but the collective is global. The mission is bringing us into a global community. And who's helping us do that again? The sacred feminine. And even Neptune in Aries, which is ruled by Mars, the sacred masculine, is giving us access to that sacred masculine energy. So you've got the feminine here in Sagittarius, that high spiritual truth and ideals. And you've got the sacred masculine here, direct pipeline to that sacred masculine here. And they're coming together to create and support this mission of a global community. And on January 24th, 2035 is when that third and final activation of the Pluto return for the US Constitution will take place. And so, you know, Neptune in Aries is all about taking action from a place of unity consciousness. How can we take action? How can we take inspired action from a place of unity consciousness? And that is being funneled in through this sextile here to the mission of, yes, the world is ready now. Humanity is ready now. Aquarius is the collective consciousness of humanity, is ready now to become a global community. And what's interesting is very close to here, within 10 degrees, is Mercury. And I didn't see it when I didn't really pay attention to it because I was looking at these 18, 17, 19 degree points, and I didn't want to go deeper by extending the orb. But, you know, we've been talking about Mercury's role, and I can't not speak to it since he's showing up here very close to Pluto at about, I think, 8 degrees something. So less than 10 degrees from Pluto, and he's retrograde again, reminding us how to communicate with the quantum to be able to create. And so I would say, speaking back to Piercing Dynasty and Russell J. Gould, that by 2035, that the world will be ready for that quantum grammar in order to facilitate our ability to create from the quantum in the eternal now as a global community. So that was a lot. It certainly took a path that I didn't anticipate by bringing in the elements of the Constitution and how what happened with the Constitution directly impacted the mission that the Declaration of Independence, you know, and this third activation of its Pluto return has to deal with. But you can see how the cycles from the past inform and influence the cycles coming up in the future. So we've got a lot to look forward, not only next year, but also over the next 12 years. And I hope that this video has been meaningful to you. You will find it on my YouTube channel at the Rose Wheel Mystery School. It will be on the playlist for cosmic events. And if you have a question about anything that I've discussed or my work, you can certainly send me an email at sophiamonalisa79@gmail.com. Remember that Sophia is spelt with an F. And so I really invite you to, you know, like this video, subscribe to my channel, ring the bell so that you're notified when I put out new videos, because I've got about 10 different playlists that I add videos to on different, you know, topical themes. So, and please share this video with your friends and family. And so thank you so much for sitting through this discussion today. It's taken a year for this information to coalesce in a way that I can be able to try to articulate it to you. So I hope it was understandable and meaningful for you. And I hope most of all that it brings you a lot of hope for the future of our nation. Thank you so much, and I will see you the next time. Many, many blessings to each of you as you celebrate your Happy New Year, wherever you are in the world, and looking forward to a fabulous 2023. Thank you. Bye-bye.